What's the best hunting camouflage? Well, today we're going to show you, so buckle up. Oh, there you are. Hey, welcome to the LocaCarnivore. Thanks for joining us today. Well, like we said, today we're talking about what's the best hunting camouflage. Is it something like this? Or maybe it's something more like this. What do you think? Or how about something old school, like your great-grandfather's stuff, something like that, huh? What do you think? Is this the deal? Is this the best camo? Or is it something really high-tech and leading edge like this? What about when it snows and it's cold? Maybe something more like this. Or does wearing orange spoil the whole effect? And there's a lot of possible answers. We're going to give you the answer at the end of the video, so stick with us. So which one of those patterns is the best, if any? Well, the fact is, the hunting camo business is a multi-million-dollar industry. And every year, the manufacturers of hunting clothing and the people who license the camo patterns to them spend a lot of money trying to convince people like you that the latest and greatest camo is going to solve all of your problems and make you absolutely invisible like the Predator did. So you would have like a cloaking device or something just by putting on their particular clothing. But is this true? So why camouflage? Frankly, hunters for millennia, eons, have known that if you don't look like a human being to a game animal, they're much more likely to let you get in close and put them in the freezer or on the fire spit or whatever it might have been at the time. So there's definitely a perceived advantage to wearing camouflage. In other words, not looking like a human, like a predator. And ancient people used to put on the skins of the animals that they were hunting and do all sorts of things. A hunting pantomime horse, or a stalking horse, is a real thing. That came about in the Middle Ages in Europe. So there's a lot of lore behind this, and to a certain degree some science. So let's find out if camo is actually effective when we're dealing with game animals. Well, to understand if camouflage is actually effective when we're dealing with game animals and hunting them, we have to understand how these animals see, how they perceive their world visually. And there's been a lot of research into this, and oddly enough, we've found out facts, and they're facts, that don't support a lot of the lore and call into question some of the claims that these camo makers would like you to believe. Basically, game animals, they don't perceive colors like you and I do. We're going to talk about deer and elk and moose and things like that, the common game species. We'll have a little aside about birds, because they're a little different a little bit later in the video. But for right now, we're just talking about those kinds of animals. Now, deer and their kind, they have different eye structures than you and I do, or most predators have. Their pupils are horizontal, and they can blow up to extremely wide diameters in the cornea to gather a lot of light. And what this does for them is they don't see and focus in a narrow area. Their fovea, which is the part of the eye that focuses the image, it's not narrow like ours. We see maybe about at best 10 degrees off center. And deer, elk, those type of animals, horses, whatever, all prey animals, they see almost completely around them is in focus. Everything they see is in focus around to the limits of their peripheral vision. This enables them to pick out details around them without having to actually physically look at whatever they want to perceive in detail. It also helps them when they're running through brush and things like that. Have you ever wondered how a deer or an elk can run through just stacks of dense timber and never, like, hurt themselves or never get tripped up typically? That's because everything for them is in focus, even down low to the ground, so they can see where their feet are going, and it's very useful for them when they're fleeing, when they're running away from threats. So they don't see like you and I do. This extends to their perception of color as well. They tend to see greens and blues much better than colors in the red to orange side of the spectrum. And what's this mean for camouflage and not looking like a deer? Well, there's some basic principles that hold for that. If they can't see reds or oranges so well, we don't have to worry too much about that. But if they see blue really well, and boy do they see blue, because deer, these animals, they have fantastic low light vision, which means they can perceive light well into the UV spectrum, and that's the ultraviolet spectrum. And this gives them a significant advantage over you and I in low light conditions. Basically, they have, night vision. If they can perceive these blue tones, it means that if you're wearing blue, this is the big thing about camouflage with game animals. If you're wearing blue, like blue jeans or something like that, you are a lit up neon sign to them. They can see you from a very long ways away. Everything you do completely, every move you make, every single thing you do is instantly visible to them. So don't wear blue, that's the first thing. Which means if you wanna be in the greens and the browns, the earth tones, be a 70s kind of person, wearing earth tones, peace man. And that way you'll be a lot less obtrusive in the environment. The other thing is they don't have the same depth perception than you and I do. Again, they're focused on everything, so they don't have quite the depth perception that a predator does. And this means if they're looking at something against a dense background, a complicated background, unless that thing moves, they tend not to see it very clearly. And you don't even have to be necessarily of the same pattern as what you're standing up against. One time when we were on a hunt, the boss and I, we stalked a deer herd across about 200 yards of a field. They were out in an open field. We moved along a fence line, and it wasn't a big fence. It was a barbed wire fence with a variety of T-posts and wooden posts. And as long as we moved slowly along there, that fence line was enough to break us up compared to the background, so that they really didn't see us, and they didn't smell us either. That's the big thing. So we were able to actually sneak up on this herd and go from about a 400-yard shot, narrow that down to about a 75-yard shot. And it did work, let me tell you. Well, if those are the types of colors that deer and their relations are reactive to and can see best, it calls into question, what about hunter orange, blaze orange? Well, there's been some research done on this, quite a bit of research out there. You can go look it up for yourself. Bottom line, deer don't care if you're wearing orange. It shows up to them, they see it, but it doesn't really register, not like the blue tones do. And so they tend to generally ignore it. And just a bit of personal experience, one time I was still hunting, I was standing just in the middle of the forest, and the wind was with me, so it was in my favor, and I had a herd of mule deer wander past me, and I didn't move a muscle. And I was literally in the middle of this herd. I could have almost reached out and touched some of these animals. And since I didn't move and they couldn't smell me, they did not care that I was wearing orange. And I was lit up. I had orange hat on, orange vest. They simply didn't care. And as soon as I moved though, then they were like, uh-oh. But they weren't any animals that, they weren't legal to shoot at that point in time. They weren't any of the ones I had a tag for. So I really couldn't do anything about it. But that gives you an example of the fact that deer and their cousins don't care about orange. So live and learn, and wear your orange, especially if it's required by law. It's safer, you'll be safer, and that's the whole point. So don't be afraid of putting orange on. The myth that it spooks game animals is just that, it's a myth. So wear your orange. Let's get back to the camo discussion, shall we? Bottom line here, deer really don't care about the pattern of camouflage you're wearing. In fact, there's a lot of camo patterns, in fact most camo patterns, to the deer, they make you look kind of blocky and weird, like you really don't belong there. You're not part of the rest of the world, their natural world, especially if you're standing in the open, you don't have a complex background behind you. You really stand out to them more if you're wearing camo than if you're just wearing plain clothes that are, like these pants here, that are solid color and they're earth tone. And while you're at it, don't forget to give us a big like. Go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you on the team. Give us that thumbs up, of course, and ring that notification bell so you'll get notified every time we come out with a new video. And as I said, if you're wearing even just plain clothing that's in the general spectrum of greens and browns, you're going to look pretty good to them to begin with. And the big thing is really your background and how much you stand out. Another fun fact is these prey animals, since their eyes are more or less on the sides of their heads, they have peripheral vision that extends almost around to their 6 o'clock, to their rumps. However, they're basically blind from this angle about 50 degrees up above their head and right in front of their head. Bottom line, if you're in a tree stand, don't worry about your camo, just don't wear blue jeans. And the big thing is, if you're up in a tree stand, they're not going to look up. They seldom look up. I've seldom seen deer look up. So like I said, if you're in a tree stand, don't worry about what camo you got on. Just wear something basic if you want. Don't have to go fancy. Main thing is, don't move. and make sure you're downwind. Now, game birds, they're a little bit different than their four-legged cousins. While they do tend to see color in the same spectral ranges as the ruminants do, they have much better depth perception. They have outstanding depth perception. Otherwise, they crash into everything when they flew. Although they do have a wide area of vision at the same time, so they're really unique. That's another thing, though, just an aside, pronghorn antelope, they have excellent depth perception, and while they can still see everything around them, they can focus at about 8 power, so they can focus really well at distance, and they see very well at distance. So that's pronghorn, the rules for the deer and stuff, it's a little bit different than the pronghorn, and that's a different subject. Someday we'll do a video exclusively about pronghorn hunting, but let's get back to the birds real quick. My experience, though, with hunting birds is they do seem to respond to camouflage patterns a lot better. And it's not that they don't see you, it's just it gives you a little bit of extra time. It confuses the bird. They're not 100% sure that you're not part of the natural environment. And I found this especially true in winter when there's snow on the ground, in winter, fall, whatever. So if I'm hunting turkey, or if I'm hunting grouse especially, things like that, upland birds, if I've got white on, it doesn't have to be patterned white, just basic white that blends in with the snow, and then the terrain and the foliage and stuff is still going to give you some sort of a breakup effect. What the camouflage does, and like woodland patterns and stuff as well when there's no snow on the ground, what it does, I found, is it gives you a few crucial seconds to get closer to those birds. So if you say you spot one out there at about 60, 70 yards and it's a little out of range for your shotgun, the camo, if you're moving very slowly and you're being quiet, it gives you a little extra time. The birds will kind of look at you like, what's that? And they'll wait a little bit because they haven't sorted it out. You look more like the background to them, and then you can usually hopefully get closer for the shot. We do need your support. Go to the Patreon link down in the description. Show us a little love there. Also, if you want more content, go to our website, LocaCarnivore.com. While you're there, hit the store tab and get some merchandise. Love that too. Well then, what is the best camo? Hey, and if you're enjoying this video, do share it with us, and we'd love to hear your comments about what camo you wear. You know, what do you think about camo in general? Is it necessary for hunting? Let us know. Bottom line here, though, you don't have to spend your money on the super expensive commercial printed patterns that are out there. You can just get some inexpensive military surplus clothing that'll do the same job. Now, this might be a more high-tech garment. You might want it for that principle, but don't feel like you have to spend money on a specific pattern or something like that. The animals really don't care. Just remember, the camo companies, they're out to make a buck, and they realize that deer don't buy camouflage, human beings do. That's why they go to so much effort to come up with all these different patterns. It's to make a dollar. And all their claims aside, really nothing's necessarily better than another pattern, quite frankly. Probably get letters about that. I'll never get a sponsorship at this rate, but I gotta tell you, that's just the honest truth of it. You don't necessarily need fancy camo. You may not even need camo at all. And no matter what camo or clothing you select, the best thing to do is to check for UV luminescence, because remember I told you those deer, those pesky animals, they see well into the UV spectrum. So take a black light and shine it on your clothing and see how much it tends to pop out or glow. If you get a lot of UV luminescence, you don't want to be wearing that. So low UV, that's really the big key on your clothing. And there are some treatments out there that you can treat your clothing that will dampen down UV, but that's only going to go to a certain degree. So you want clothing that is in and of itself intrinsically UV damped or UV neutral. In fact, the best camouflage you can possibly have is don't move. Stand as still or move as slowly as you absolutely can, and stay downwind of your animals all the time. That'll give you better protection and better invisibility cloak, if you will, than any of this stuff ever will. And don't forget to wear your orange and stay safe out there. We want to see you around for a long time here at the channel. And thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us at the LocaCarnivore today. We really appreciate it. Remember, the ultimate act of resistance is insisting upon facts.
Mwahaha!